The Trade is brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.
Hello and welcome to The Trade. Before we get into the charts that matter, let's have a quick look at what traders are watching out there. US President Donald Trump urging Iranians to evacuate Tehran, citing what he said was the country's rejection of a deal to curb nuclear weapons development. An Israeli strike hit Iran's state broadcaster overnight, while the head of the UN nuclear watchdog indicated extensive damage to Iran's biggest uranium enrichment plant, and Iran called on the US to force a ceasefire in the area of war. Japanese Prime Minister Shiba and US President Trump have agreed to push ahead with trade talks, but failed to achieve a breakthrough that would lower or eliminate tariffs that threaten to hobble the Japanese economy. And meanwhile, we're awaiting the BOJ decision. The Bank of Japan expected to consider slowing reductions in its bond purchases under a quantitative tightening plan as the bank focuses on avoiding big market disruptions amid growing economic uncertainties. And G7 leaders have faced early challenges during meetings in Canada. As Trump said, removing Russia from the former group of 8 over a decade had been a mistake. And of course, we have to point out that President Trump has left the G7 early. Let's get across the technicals. Peter McGuire from trading.com joining me now. Peter, great to see you as always. Let's have a quick look in terms of what we've been seeing with oil, because of course, Brent very much spiked during Friday's session, up something like 13%. But there has been somewhat of a pullback because markets are expecting perhaps there will be a de-escalation.
Well, good morning, Juliet. Yes, absolutely. I mean, Friday was game on, and as you know, 13% was just a huge rally. Well, it was parabolic. So that gave up some of those gains. It was back at about 71.50 overnight, and then it's up the best part of 1.75% this morning in trade. Brent's back at 74.50, WTI just over $73 a barrel. And what President Trump said as far as the Tehran situation and how that could all really erupt over the next couple of days, I think oil is going to have another surge upwards.
Okay, so where do you see it go? I mean, that's quite an extraordinary chart you've got there.
Yeah, look, it's when you're looking at fundamentals like this, geopolitical concerns, and you've got to look at history. You're worried about a couple of things, Juliet. First off, choke points in the Strait of Hormuz, and if that was to gather steam and naturally go to Yemen and the Houthis and Bab el-Mandeb, the strait there leading into the Red Sea, that would absolutely destroy shipping in that area as far as, well, from a distribution standpoint. That one would have to think that you'd probably see it ratchet up over the $80 handle, and you may even go higher than that. I mean, potentially returning to levels above $100 a barrel last seen in 2022 if you saw something dramatic happen. These are uncharted, we don't know, but everything's on the table at the moment.
Everything is indeed, and it also puts a lot of plays into safe haven back on the table. What are we seeing with gold, Pete?
Well, when you're looking gold's 34.19, it's given up some of those gains. I thought it might have cracked through 3,500, but it pulled back, Juliet, from about that 34.60 sort of handle back to 34.20. The overall momentum, I think US dollar came under big pressure overnight. It was at 97.70 odd, and it's backed over 98 at the moment, that US dollar index. What's it running at? 98.25. So gold is somewhere to have in a portfolio. I mean, you've only got to look at where it is over in that chart. Just tells a wonderful story as far as, upward momentum. And many of the banks are now calling 4,000 very achievable in, latter part of Q3 and maybe even into Q4.
Okay, well, of course, this puts into play other safe havens as well. And we know that that's the US dollar index, which has been very volatile. What are the technicals showing us now?
Well, it was oversold probably, but then again, look at the chart there. That really is just something dynamic. Currency traders have been all over this over the last couple of months, from that high of 110 all the way through to what we saw overnight at 97.75. It's back above 98 now. You've got so many concerns. You've got the tariff situation. You've got possibility of war, and whether that was to really, I suppose, engulf all of the Mideast. President Trump's comments as far as Tehran, leave the city. So all of these factors, one would think, would be a return to safety. I mean, when you're looking at technicals on these sort of, geopolitical circumstances, Juliet, I think everyone's got their own opinion and where that really, where you best use your money. But overall at the moment, currencies are incredibly volatile, and it's not something set and forget. You've really got to be on the game and appreciate all of the moving parts.
Yeah, all right. We've got the Swissy there as well, just showing us against the euro, really, some move into safe havens as well.
Absolutely. I mean, when you look, it could be a little bit of consolidation, as you've seen there, sideways movement at the Swiss franc, gold backed, as we know, against the euro. Euro's been incredibly strong against that US dollar. Swiss franc's doing quite well as well. So there's a possibility as far as a trade, and traders are very much aware as far as cross rates. Doesn't have to be all against the US dollar. There's something there, Swiss franc, New Zealand Swiss franc, you name it, yen, Swiss franc. Everything's got potential for very good moves and wonderful opportunities as far as breaking out of current ranges and so on.
All right, let's have a look at what we're seeing with US equities, though, particularly with momentum in the S&P 500. It was up almost 1% overnight, so holding above 6,000 there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the S&P 6,033, we're really in, close range, just taking an all-time high out. It's had nice move to the upside. Nasdaq 19,700, Dow at 42,500. So yeah, they're only a couple of percent away. Certainly the S&P, I think the high was 61.40 or so. So it's really closing in on that sort of take an all-time high out. And I feel as though that'll be achievable sometime this month because the overall momentum has been strong. Let's just see again, but we've got to worry about what's happening as far as the situation, certainly in the Middle East, and where President Trump sees his negotiations come to play.
We certainly do, but at the same time, a lot of central banks coming through with decisions, including the BOJ today. What is both the Nikkei 225 and the yen showing you at the moment, Pete?
Yen 144.80, it's still it's choppy, but I wouldn't be surprised to see that yen strengthen a little bit further. I noticed your intro as far as bond purchases and what the central bank's going to do. I don't think you're going to see a rate rise anytime soon. They're still working through the whole situation as far as tariffs with the US, and the S&P, the Nikkei 225. Has been, a little bit range bound, but it's had, that big uplift as you've seen, and it's certainly been a great market to be a part of over the last, 6 months or so. So I don't think, again, depending upon what your appetite is, Japan's not a bad place to trade currencies and certainly stock market.
All right, Pete, thanks so much as always. Peter McGuire there from trading.com. That does it for this edition of The Trade. Be sure to join us next time.
The Trade was brought to you by Vantage Markets, delivering one of Australia's most trusted and award-winning trading experiences. Explore smart trading at vantagemarkets.com.au.